I recently had a conversation with someone in their 20s and they said to me, Ken, I've got my own property already. I'm a first-time buyer, but I've also got £20,000 just sitting in my savings that I'd love to invest. What on earth should I do with it? And I thought this is actually a dilemma that I think many people can relate to. Incidentally, I had somebody else DM me and said, I'm recently turned 20, I've been saving and I have £30,000 that I need to invest. But what on earth do I do with it? So today I want us to explore how to invest anything between £10,000 and £30,000. But rather than just sit here and give you tips on investing stocks or invest in this and this, I want us to actually walk through the thought process. Like, how do you begin that thought process? Because there'll be many of you watching with different personal circumstances, different goals for the future and so on. So today, I'd love you to really bear with me because what I want to do today is really unpack how I would think about it from the very beginning to get to the point where I would then, of course, list all those various different forms of investments that you can look to explore with your money. Part one is me walking through the thought process, okay, which we're going to do. And part two will be me showing you the various assets at the end in order for you to then make a choice for what to invest your money in. Now, if you love the sound of that, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button, because that just really helps our channel as we continue to grow here at The Humble Penny. All right, let's jump straight in. So guys, before I get onto my main board, I want to do a small illustration here just to explain almost my framework, because I prefer to teach you a framework that really explains how to think about this before we get onto a bit more detail, okay? So I have an acronym that I've taught on many videos, but I apply this same acronym across all areas of my life. The acronym is P.O.S.T. So purpose, P for purpose, O for objectives, S for strategy, and T for tactics. Now, let's say, because there'll be many people who've got various goals, I want to make some assumptions so we can have a bit of focus. Let's say that your ultimate purpose was, in this example, for illustration only, is to live a stress-free life of financial joy. So you want to not have to worry about money, you want to just live your best life, okay? Let's say that's what it is. Let's say tied to that purpose is your objective. Very clear, which is you want to be financially independent by the 31st of December 2032. Now, obviously tied to that would be a specific amount you're aiming for, okay? And this could be that you're trying to create income from assets that replace your current, living expenses, yeah? Or that you're aiming for a specific amount, like, 600K to £1 million. You have to have a specific number, okay? That's that. Strategy to achieve that objective then is various things, okay? Which we're going to explore on the board. Could be anything. Could be stock market investing, property investing, starting a wildly successful online business. Could be you starting a side hustle whilst you focus on your career and so on, okay? Now, tactics are the things, the small steps you then need to, for the how, which is the strategy to actually work, okay? Strategy could be to increase your savings rate to 50% such that you're saving and investing so much more money. Could be that you're overpaying on your mortgage because you want to pay off your home, reduce your expenses. Could be that you go the other way and leverage up and use bank leverage to invest in property and so on, okay? So this is the picture before we now head over to the main board to then go into a bit more detail. So guys, the whole point of me showing you that whole purpose, objective, strategy, and tactics in the previous scene was to essentially say that if you've got 10 to 30K or anything in between or anything outside of that, essentially your investing is entirely connected to your ultimate why. Yeah, so like, what is the thing you're aiming for? So you should only invest your money if you've got a goal, an objective you're trying to achieve. Yeah, that's why I showed you that framework. And so I've drawn a few things here. It's going to look a bit confusing initially, but don't worry, it's going to make a lot of sense. So here's the P.O.S.T. just so we stay on track. So that P.O.S.T. then leads us to almost like a bit of a decision tree, yeah? Keeping this really clear, so here we're investing 10K to about 30K, okay? Now, obviously this will apply if you're trying to invest 40K or whatever, but I'm just keeping it to 10 to 30K, all right? So at the very beginning, you can see, and I hope you can read this, the first question I'm asking you at the very beginning if your goal, remember our goal for this person is that they want to become financially free in the next 10 years, yeah? So I'm just using this framework. So the first question I'm asking is, do you own your own home? Okay? Now, I know not everybody wants to own a home, but most people do. And it matters based on our journey towards becoming financially free. It has radically changed our lives. So the answer is either a yes, the Y, or an N, which is a no. If the answer is a yes, I've then got another question I'm asking, which is, do you have other investments? I'm writing it here. Other, hopefully you can read that, investments. Okay? Do you have other investments? So here I'm talking things like, do you have investments in equities and beyond, basically non-property assets. Why does that matter? Because we don't want to be overexposed to just one asset class. Okay? Do you have other investments? However, if your answer was no, do you have a property? If you said no, my question here could be, do you want to buy your first home? Okay, first property. Or you could say, well, actually, do you want to buy your first home? Or do you want to buy to let? Right? Buy to let. Because some people, they don't want to buy their first home. They want to buy to let first because they might be living at home still, particularly people in their 20s and beyond, obviously. Or they might not want property at all. Do you want to invest in the stock market? Okay. Now, coming back to the top. So you've said, do you own your own home? Yes, I own my own home. Do you have other investments? Yes, I have other investments. Then my question to you, if you're that lucky person who's got their own home and who's got some other investments already, my question to you is, at this stage of your journey, what's very important for you when it comes to achieving your ultimate goal, which is that you want to become financially independent? Do you want income or do you want capital appreciation? Now, you might be wondering the difference is, well, generally speaking, the people who are at their kind of wealth accumulation phase of their journey will typically really want capital. They want their money working and working over many years to come. So a lot of young people would really want capital appreciation, but people who are in that kind of gone past that key wealth accumulation phase, or people who are, feel like they're starting out a bit later in life, might want to focus on income because like priorities for them might be retirement and stuff like that. Okay, we're going to go into what the options are in a minute. Now, if your answer here was no, do you have other investments? I would say to you, invest in other non-property assets. Right? And in order to invest in those non-property assets, key question again, a bit like above, would be, do you want income or do you want capital? And again, that will lead us to various assets, which we're going to look at the end, okay? So looking at this scenario again, where someone said, I've asked, do you have your own home? They've said no. And I've said, should you then invest in buying your first home? If they've gone and made that move of buying their first home, the next natural move should then be for them to invest in non-property assets. So I could just put an arrow from here to here, right? That would be their next natural move. However, if they've said they don't own their first home and instead they chose to invest in a buy-to-let, then the next natural move, this for most people most likely, is that they will want to buy their home. Okay, there are people like that right now who buy a buy-to-let first and then afterwards they buy their own home. In fact, if you've got that dilemma right now, you think to yourself, is this what I want to explore doing for myself? We've done a specific dilemma solution on this channel, which I'll link to below and above, he's going to check out. And then this bottom scenario is someone who says, I don't own my own home, don't care Ken, I'm renting, don't want to buy my own home. Then the natural thing for them, most sensible thing, would be for them to invest in the stock market. Okay? It's tried and tested, it's been around for a long time, and it will carry on being around for a long time. Okay? And after they've invested in stock market, if they don't want to go ahead investing in further property units, they simply just need to rinse and repeat. Okay? Because we all know about average stock market returns, okay? 7%, 8%, 9%, depending on where you're investing and beyond. And then this person here, who first of all bought their buy-to-let and then bought a home after, could then literally start to invest in other non-property assets. Again, they will assess, do they want income at that stage as a priority, or is their priority capital appreciation? So guys, I've sped things up a bit and written everything on the board so we can just go through it in detail. So remember, this individual, in this scenario, you own your own home, you explore other investments. If you want income, you can explore different income choices. Yeah, I've put here other investments. It could be REITs. Obviously, REITs is property, but it's property through the stock market. So it's a different variety. And obviously, the income you're getting from that is dividend income. You can explore more property if you wanted. And of course, the income you're getting from that is rental income. You can explore blue chip stocks that pay you dividends. Okay, these are large companies with a core strategy of paying investors dividends. Just simply Google dividend aristocrats, for example, and you see a list of companies that do that. You also have dividend aristocrats here in the UK. Again, we've made a video on this actually specifically, which I'll link to below and above if you're interested in investing for dividend income via blue chip companies. Next, for income could be a business. You could start a business and focus purely on paying yourself a dividend from that business, okay? That's a way in which a lot of people pay themselves tax efficiently from their business, okay? Or you can invest in other people's businesses with the viewpoint of getting a dividend. Could be a small business that you buy into, or it could be a larger business. Essentially, you're getting a dividend. And the final piece is either investing more into savings, which we all know you get little next to nothing in returns, but you do get interest income. Or if you put your money into bonds, you get coupons. You get, again, a similar thing, okay? Now, note with all those, I've also put next to them, and this is very important because this is helping us decide how we'll actually choose what to invest in. Different risks attached to each one. So I've put REITs on there are low to medium size risk, okay? Property is, I'd say, is medium size risk. Some might say it's high risk, but I'd just say it's medium. Blue chip stocks, I'd say medium to high risk. Businesses, I'd say medium. Savings and bonds, low risk, okay? Now, if, however, your priority here was capital appreciation, then you might say, well, actually, although I've got my own property, I might want to either invest in more property, which is fine, or pay down my own home, okay? So this is where people try and become mortgage-free, overpay on their properties, and try to own their home outright. That's an option. And I've put there, the risk attached to that is medium. And there are other considerations. Please be patient, we're getting to them. If you have capital appreciation, you can invest in index funds and ETFs. We'll talk about that at length on this channel, okay? If you want that, you could have a business, or you might invest, if you are super daring, you might put your money into crypto. Not for everybody, okay, but worth mentioning. So, all these areas, as you can see again, have different risks attached. Property, medium, index funds and ETFs are for medium risk. Although some people might say they're fairly low risk, but they are medium because the stock market goes up and down. Businesses, medium, crypto, super high, right? Super high risk. Now, similar thing on this end. This is someone who doesn't have other investments and would like to invest in other non-property assets. So again, a similar thing is being repeated here. Essentially, I've gone through this process to get us to this position where we have applied some form of thinking to arriving at our options. So rather than me saying, because I could have done this video and just said to you, hey, your options are REITs, property, blue chip stocks, index funds, crypto, blah, blah, blah. I could have just given you a list. But to be honest, I would have felt like that was a lazy way of getting to the end destination. So I wanted to go through this process of actually helping us think through what this means for us individually. What does it mean for you individually? Because everybody watching this video right now will have different circumstances, different goals, different risk profiles, and so on. So that brings us to this end bit here, right? Which is what you expected in some ways, right? However, before you can say, oh, Ken, I know, I already own my own home. I've got 10K to 30K, right? Investing other investments. I just want to buy property, more property. Or I want to buy stock market index fund. Before you do that, there are some additional considerations, which are, first, I've talked about it, your risk appetite. Are you low risk? Are you open to medium risk? Are you open to high risk investments? Second, liquidity. How much liquidity do you want? Yeah, because some investments aren't that liquid. Yeah, so like property, for example, is great, you know, but depends when you buy property. It might not be as liquid, right? Depends, okay? Sometimes you buy it, you know, whereas investing in the stock market, you can quite easily sell. So liquidity essentially means the ease with which you can get your money back. Yeah. But the stock market is far more liquid because you can sell today and get your money back tomorrow or even today, right? So liquidity is an important consideration. In fact, where you invest your money through also matters. For example, if you invest through a pension, it's not as liquid as, say, if you invest in the stock market through, say, your stocks and shares ISA, for example. Okay? So you can see risk and liquidity play a very, very important role. Then there's inflation. Big topic right now and will continue to be in the future. Inflation is at double digits right now. So the question is which of these should I be investing in given there's a period of high inflation? Which of these has the potential to give me the returns? For example, property actually does, because during a time of high inflation, people who own property, not only do their property prices keep rising, in most cases, not always, but they have the potential to raise rents in line with inflation. So for those guys, it actually works for them. But then there's also a challenge with inflation and property because during times of high inflation, interest rates start to rise, as we're seeing right now. So people who have properties also have their financing costs, their mortgages that they have to think about with rising costs attached, okay? But that's just worth highlighting. Other assets worth exploring that could be inflation are investing in the stock market, okay? That has the potential. And as at the time of making this video, we've seen historic, pretty significant falls, shall I say, in the stock market, beyond 20% for a lot of the major indices like the S&P 500 and so on. A lot of those marketplaces are starting to pick up, they go up and down, but we've seen quite significant falls since the start of the year. Global REITs are great as a way to try and beat inflation. Again, it's tied to investing in property units, where you don't own the physical property units themselves, but you partake in the potential returns from other companies owning those property units, and you get in dividend income as a result. So inflation is a big topic. And then finally is the returns, okay? Looking at these, let's say you're someone who says, I want income, okay? If you go and put your money in savings and in bonds, then the returns you get might not be quite as good as you might in the medium to long term, of course, compared to, say, if you invested in property or if you invested in the stock market and so on. Okay, because risk and reward are like two sides of the same coin. The higher the risk, the higher the expected return. Doesn't always work, but that's what's likely to happen over time. So you'd see that property, for example, from a return perspective, will benefit from the potential of much higher returns. Why? Because you are employing leverage. You're using somebody else's money. If you bought a property and put out a 25% deposit, the bank gives you 75%, then your return's really only based on that 25% that you've put in. So you notice that your returns are likely to be a lot higher, but of course, property has a barrier to entry in that you need some capital to actually begin that journey, okay? So all I'm doing here is actually helping us to think, okay? To become smarter investors in the way we think, whilst also following this process and considering our entire asset allocation such that we're not overexposed to one asset class. This is why I began with property. The last thing you want essentially is to have everything in property or have everything in property in the UK, having this local bias. That has a huge disadvantage because you do want an element of diversification, purely not only just because of the risk element, but also because all these other asset classes carry different risk profiles when it comes to helping you to achieve your goals. And those risk profiles, as I mentioned earlier, have expected returns to which they're connected. And then wrapping up on the point on returns, picking the stock market, for example, I picked, say, dividend stocks. I said here, index funds and ETFs, you're looking for capital appreciation over time. Obviously, index funds and ETFs also pay dividends depending on what you're investing into. Picking that, I've written here certain areas you might want to focus on during times of high inflation and things like that. You want to be looking at index funds that are covering these marketplaces. Developed markets, emerging markets. You want to be looking at value companies, and you want to be looking at index funds and ETFs that have exposure to smaller companies because they're likely to generate an above normal return. All right, to wrap us up, I hope you've enjoyed this journey of actually thinking through the process for how you go about investing your 10K to 30K. Essentially, what I'm trying to help us understand is this. I've began with, what sort of assets are you currently exposed to? In this case, I've started with property, and then I've helped us actually think of diversifying into other assets. That's why I've asked us these core questions here. I've tied those core questions to your objective, your core main objective, which at the very beginning I've assumed to be someone who is trying to become financially free and achieve a particular purpose in their lives. And then from there, we've moved on. I've prioritized other elements on what you might want depending on your stage of your wealth building journey, whether you are prioritizing income or whether you're prioritizing capital. And if you're prioritizing income and capital, what are those options? And I've given you what those options are. And based on what those options are, rather than just diving, I've also then added another layer, which is very important, which is for us to look at what our risk appetite is, whether we're risk loving, high risk, medium risk, or low risk. What sort of investments do we need in order to achieve our goals? Because different risky assets attract different levels of returns. And obviously, the higher the return, the expected return, the quicker and much more likely you are to achieve your goal, your financial goals, in a set period of time. And then finally, in addition to risk related to liquidity, inflation, and the sort of returns you might be looking to expect in order to achieve your goals. So guys, giving all the illustrations I made earlier, if I had £10,000 to £30,000 right now, given my own level of attitude to risk, expectations for liquidity, expectations for returns for my own future, I would invest in one of three things. Could be either of these three things. First, I will invest in property. I take the 30K, whatever it is, and I put it straight into property because I already have investments in other areas like the stock market and so on. So for me, I'd focus on trying to explore either a house with multiple occupancy, so a HMO type setup, and I'd use leverage, try and achieve that, build a business case around doing that because I'm much more likely to generate much higher returns. I'd do it outside of London and find a property that doesn't require a lot of capital input. But that 30K, I probably need a bit more than that. Probably need about 50K and beyond to be able to put down as a deposit. But that will be my focus. I'd focus on property. And again, that will work well in this time of inflation personally. Again, for those reasons that I've given previously, thinking long-term and seeing rents potentially increase if I was an investor. The second thing would be, again, I'd just take all the money, it could be one or the other, I'd invest into the stock market. We've seen historic falls in the stock market and that presents great opportunity for the future. If you believe in companies and the power of companies that create value for the future, then you know that companies will likely carry on to do well over time, perhaps not immediately, but if you're thinking very long term, so kind of beyond a decade from now, then you're likely to see significant returns from the stock market falls that we've seen more recently. And the final thing I'd invest into is into a business. I believe in the power of businesses. I'm a business owner and I love the idea of having impact through a business for a specific purpose and also creating some profits by running a business. So I see a great future in investing in companies, whether in my own company or in other people's companies. Guys, I really hope you've enjoyed today's video exploring all things investing, anything from around £10,000 or dollars all the way to around £30,000 or dollars. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments. What would you invest that sort of money in and why, based on the various things I've explained on today's video? Jump in the comments and let me know. If you really enjoyed today's video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button because that truly helps us on this journey of growing our channel and reaching even more people. Thank you so much for watching today's video, guys, and as always, in all things, be thankful and seek joy. Take care and bye for now.